Hello and welcome to this World of Tanks tutorial. My name is Maxwell and today we're going to be taking a look at light tank scouting. We'll start with the absolute basics of scouting, the why. We'll get to the how in just a minute. In World of Tanks you don't just earn experience and credits for damaging and destroying targets, you also earn experience and credits for being the first to spot or uncover an enemy tank. You also earn experience and credits if you are the only tank within range to see an enemy and someone else destroys or damages that enemy. Basically, this is calling in an enemy's location to your teammates they would otherwise be unable to see. It is done automatically and is based on the range of your radio. The bigger your radio range, the further you can call in enemy positions from. So, as you may have guessed, a good scout can easily turn the tide of a battle. Okay, so there are three main scouting techniques when using light tanks. They are rushing, roaming and spotting. We're going to be taking a closer look at each of these and the tactics involved. So, technique 1, the rush. This is by far the simplest of the three techniques as it involves the least skill and planning. All you basically do is point your tank at the enemy base and drive as fast as you can, trying to dodge incoming shots along the way. As you may have guessed, this doesn't always end well for the rushing tank, and most of the time you get yourself blown up in or around the enemy's base. Now, having said all that, if you do manage to survive due to supreme luck or skill, you need a plan once you're in the enemy's base. The safest bet is to try and take out your opponent's artillery, SPGs, and get the hell out of there. Just remember that's pretty much everyone will be gunning for you, so your survival rate isn't great. Now, with all these negatives stacked against it, why would you choose to use this scouting technique? Well, as said earlier, it is the simplest of the three techniques, but aside from that, you'll have all of the experience that comes from detecting most of the enemy team. Not to mention, you'll have lit up everyone for your artillery to bombard, earning you even more experience. This scouting method is particularly effective on maps like Malinovka and El Haluf, where your opponent will most likely pick a spot and not move for most of the battle, meaning even after you die, your team should have a good idea where the base defense is located. In conclusion, only use this scouting method sparingly as it rarely works out to plan and will leave your team deprived of a scout. I would rate this scouting method 8 out of 10 for spotting, 2 out of 10 for survivability, and 5 out of 10 for usefulness. Okay, so on to technique number 2, which is called roaming. This scouting method is similar to the rush, as you will initially be rushing towards the enemy's base. However, unlike the rush, you will stop short and either pull back towards your own base, or circle around the enemy's base in an attempt to uncover more of the enemy tanks. This method obviously has similar drawbacks to the rush, meaning you will be the prime target for the enemy team. If you find yourself under heavy fire, it's best to pull back into your own territory until the heat wears off, or try and use the terrain to your advantage. Try putting a rock between yourself and the shooter, or drive down into a valley or dip to provide yourself some cover. Remember, if you continue to push on to the enemy's base, you won't live long like in the rushing method. There are a couple of golden rules when using this scouting method to help prolong your life and your usefulness for your team. The first of these is, don't stop, for anything or anyone if possible. Always be moving, as it makes you a lot harder to hit and much more unpredictable when the enemy is tracking you. As an aside to this, you're going to want to use auto-aim a lot in this method, as you'll have to focus a lot on where you're driving rather than where you're shooting. And secondly, don't shoot at what you can't hurt. Basically, this means, if you're blazing past that Tiger tank, resist the urge to have a pot shot if you know your gun won't scratch him. This is because he may not have seen you coming, allowing you to slip past him, and by the time he realises you were there, he hasn't got that shot on you anymore. Having that pot shot will alert him to your presence in advance, cutting your survival rate drastically. This scouting method is fantastic for spotting the enemy's positions, as you should be zipping in and out of their lines, giving your artillery and bigger guns a chance to do some real damage. Remember, as said earlier, if you're the spotter and someone else destroys a tank that you've relayed the position of, you also get a share of the experience and credits for the kill. Now, another good thing about this scouting method is, it forces the enemy to chase you all around the map. This has the benefit of pulling tanks out of position to chase you and revealing their whereabouts to your teammates. Almost every time you'll find people will stop their advance to try and take you out, allowing your team to gain valuable ground on a particular flank. If you do find you pick up a chase tank that won't leave you alone, try doubling back towards your defensive line. 9 times out of 10, you'll find your allies will take care of them for you. So, in conclusion, this is a fantastic scouting technique that strikes a good balance between spotting, survivability and earnings, but it will require some serious practice. I would rate this scouting method 8 out of 10 for spotting, 5 out of 10 for survivability, and 8 out of 10 for usefulness.
Enemy armor is hit. Target acquired. I don't see the target.
And finally we come to scouting technique number 3, spotting. This method of scouting, if performed properly, is by far the most useful for your team and therefore in turn the best for you. This method requires a good knowledge of each map and likely enemy routes to be the most effective, so repeated practice is definitely necessary to accomplish the best results using this technique. So, onto the method itself. As a spotter, your job is to get to an advanced position on the map in the likely path of the enemy's advance, before any enemy tanks reach that position and take up a good hiding spot. You can tell if you are well hidden by zooming your camera out and swinging around to look at the front of your own tank. If the whole of your tank's hull is silhouetted in white, then you are effectively hidden from the enemy. Remember, you don't need to be sitting inside a bush to be hidden, just having it between you and the enemy is a better option as its cover is maximised. Now that you've taken up a good hiding spot, all you basically do is sit still and wait for the enemy tanks to show up. As you can see, this method requires some luck based on your opponent's chosen path. And the golden rule for this scouting technique is, remain as still as possible. Don't move, don't shoot, don't even turn your turret if possible. As an aside, if you hold down the right hand mouse button, your gun will remain fixed in place until you release the button. As a spotter, you will be lighting up targets for your allies to take out from a greater distance, and as said earlier, you will be earning part of the experience and credits for each kill. If you do fire your weapon or move, you're almost certainly going to reveal yourself to the enemy, which will almost always lead to your destruction, and your team will lose all the targets you were spotting. This method does require a lot of patience on your part, but it is one of the best methods for scouting and is an enormous help to your team. Another thing you need to keep in mind while spotting is you should always have an escape plan in case you get spotted yourself. An enemy tank may decide to hide in the same bush as you, or you may get spotted moving. Basically, plan out where you can retreat to in the event you need to. Pick out a good rock or a dip in the terrain where you cannot be fired upon. Nothing too far away as you'll be under heavy fire trying to get there. Once the area you are spotting for has been cleared, or you're unlucky enough to get spotted, you need a follow-up plan. It's no good trying to take up a similar position in a different area, as the enemy will almost certainly have its defences set by now, and you'll almost certainly get spotted yourself getting into position. It's usually best now to switch to a roaming or rushing method, perhaps trying to take out the enemy's artillery, or try and get behind the enemy's tank destroyers, forcing them to break position to try and take you out. So, in conclusion, this method of scouting is very valuable to your team, but is the hardest to achieve well, as a good understanding of each map and likely enemy movements is required. That being said, it is the safest method for yourself and can yield the best results, as you can effectively turn the tide of a fight on a particular flank. I would rate this scouting method 6 out of 10 for spotting, 8 out of 10 for survivability, and 8 out of 10 for usefulness.
That one didn't go through.
Okay, so finally I wanted to leave you with a sort of live demonstration of the techniques we've already been speaking about, sort of putting them into practice so you can have a look at some effective scouting. So I started this battle with the initial idea to do the spotting technique. I wanted to get up around the outcropping of rocks here and find a good bush to hide in. So we'll see how that works out. Driving along. Takes a while to get there. But basically you want to pick a spot which is not too far away. Reasonably close to the enemy's base, but not so close that their slower tanks like tank destroyers and mediums will be able to reach there before you, or else you'll just get spotted getting into position and get blown up. So I decided to head a little bit past this rock and get into that bush just there, try and take up position and see what I can spot. And there we go. Now unfortunately I overshot that slightly because the A20 goes a little bit too fast, and I believe that Wolverine has spotted me. You can generally tell by watching the turrets on the tanks. If it turns towards you, then there's a good chance you've been spotted. Yep, there we go. There's the tracer over the head. So, totally failed at spotting there, so I decided to just go for more of a roaming technique here. So, obviously try and sneak past them on the left, well, not sneak, but drive past those on the left flank. Luckily one of my allies has taken him out because I've spotted him. That's good. You'll generally find that being a scout, your allies will have you back, just because you'll be lighting up a lot of targets and they'll generally want the kills. Now I spot two heavy tanks here and think, oh dear, that's it for me. But we'll see what happens. Now, as I said earlier in the tutorial, you will generally find if you push down one flank totally by yourself that a lot of the enemy will stop what they're doing, turn around and focus entirely on you. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, just thought I'd drive into the enemy's base and make an attempt to try and take out their artillery pieces, because an enemy without artillery is pretty screwed basically. So chase this guy down and see if I'm able to take him out. Just as a note, as you can see up the top there, those two heavy tanks that I passed earlier have in fact, instead of trying to push up that flank, which they should be doing, have now decided to turn round and drive down the hill and try and take me out. Which means that our tanks will now be able to push that flank totally unopposed, which is generally what happens. You will find that happens a lot if you're sort of driving to the enemy's base. A lot of the tanks will turn around and focus entirely on you and leave an entire flank unprotected. So I have a drive out of the enemy's base, try and get behind their tank destroyers without them spotting me. Unfortunately, that doesn't quite work. So I've taken a couple of good hits, so I'm trying to get behind this rock for cover, and there's a medium tank waiting for me. So that will happen a lot. As a scout, your survivability isn't fantastic. Take a few hits and you will generally be killed. I thought I'd leave this on just so you can see how the fight turns out in the end. That's their tank destroyer trying to change positions as he knows he's been spotted. Unfortunately, he again gets spotted moving. So if you take a quick look at the mini-map there, you can see we've got a heavy tank and a medium tank moving in totally unopposed. Because those two heavy tanks, instead of pushing that flank, decided to try and take out this one light tank, i.e. me, which didn't go very well for them. So we'll just watch this this battle come to a conclusion. I just basically wanted to leave it on till the end so you can see what kind of credits and experience you can earn being an effective scout. Just bear in mind that the A20 that I was using is a tier 4 tank, so not particularly high up. I mean, there are tier 5 light tanks out at the moment, but they're pretty expensive and experienced to buy. So I'm just sticking with the A20 for now. And if we take out the last of their tanks, we'll see the scoreboard. So as you can see, it's a decent amount of experience, not a fantastic amount of credits, but like I said, it is only tier 4. So I'll move on to achievements. Detected, you get experience and credits for each of those, and you'll generally earn a medal, which is the Scout Medal. So I hope you liked this light tank scouting tutorial. If you did, don't forget to like or favourite this video, and don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see some more tutorials in the future. Thank you very much for watching.